Hello, friends, it's Kat from Meow Meow Kapow. If you haven't already watched the first part of this tutorial, where we learn how to make a repeating pattern by hand, I've linked it up in the iCards. You'll probably want to check that out first so you've got a design to work with, but hey, you do you. If you want to Benjamin Button these instructions, I welcome it. I've also linked any materials down in the doobly-doo, which is really just the tablet I use. A few years ago, I needed a new tablet to replace my over 10-year-old Wacom that finally kicked the bucket. I actually bought a couple of budget tablets, but had to return them because they either didn't function the way I wanted them to or just straight up didn't function. After attempting to pinch my pennies, I learned the same lesson I've learned with pretty much every art supply. If it costs less, it's usually going to cost you more somehow. Either because you spend more time on malfunctions or because you spend more money buying multiple cheap things. So if you're looking for a good tablet that works out of the box and will last a darn long time, I recommend Wacom over and over and over again. There's a reason they're king in the tablet game. Anywho, after you've got your design drawn out on paper, you'll need to scan it in. I'm using a somewhat well-aged Mac on a slightly older operating system, so you might not have the exact programs that I have, but hopefully you have something similar. There are plenty of ways to import images from a scanner, but I prefer to use the built-in program called Preview on my Mac. If you already have something else you like to use and are comfortable with it, go for it. I don't have the world's greatest scanner, but it gets the job done. When I import an image, I usually set the resolution to as high as it will go, which for this machine is only 600 ppi, but that's still twice as much as the standard 300 dpi that images are usually printed at. If you're going to end up printing whatever you're scanning, it's usually better to scan it in at a really high resolution because then you can scale the image to be larger than it originally was with little to no distortion. Given that our goal at the end of this video is to upload the pattern to Redbubble for print, yeah, I'd say going for the higher ppi is a good move. There are some other settings you can mess with when scanning, and I sometimes use the auto-detect features as far as the paper itself goes, but it sometimes captures the image slightly skewed or not entirely. I like to do all the color adjustments and whatnot in Photoshop, so really all that matters is getting the image, maybe rotating it to the correct orientation if you're feeling fancy, and saving it somewhere. Did I mention that my computer is fairly well aged? It's not the oldest, but it's also definitely not current. I also can't actually safely update my operating system to the latest version because some of my programs are incompatible with it, like this super old standalone version of Photoshop I got back before they started charging monthly for their programs. This means that while we may not be using the same programs as each other in this tutorial, the general principle is the same. So, fire up your image editing program of choice. Rather than opening the scanned image, make a new image with the original physical paper size and your scanner's PPI settings. I should probably mention that PPI stands for pixels per inch, whereas DPI means dots per inch. Dots per inch means how many tiny dots of ink exist in 1 square inch of printed page, whereas PPI means how many pixels in 1 square inch. Fun fact in case you were wondering. The terms are basically used interchangeably nowadays, but they do technically mean something different. Anyway, I used some pre-cut 10 by 8 inch watercolor sheets, so I know the exact measurements that the full image should be, therefore that's the size of my canvas. From here, I place the scanned image on the canvas and try to resize it as best I can so the actual image portion itself fits exactly within the frame. Whenever I'm resizing, I always hold down the Shift key on my keyboard because Shift forces the resize to remain proportional. If you've ever seen an image that looks slightly stretched, like a person's face being way too tall and thin or something, that usually means the image was resized without the Shift key being held down, so it stretches the image rather than fully upscaling the overall size. Take your time to get it as good as you can, and it's totally okay if it's not perfect because in my experience, at this stage, it never is. But we're here to change all that, so no worries. Once it's where you want it, hit the Enter or Return key on your keyboard to finish placing. Because this is a black and white image, basically the biggest adjustment we need to make is with the levels. I don't actually know how to explain what levels do or what traditional method of adjustment they're mimicking, since most tools in Photoshop are actual tools you could use in a real darkroom or with traditional mediums. But levels are the best adjustment you can use for straight up black and white artwork. For some reason, my screen recording froze while I was doing this part, but to get a level adjustment layer, at the bottom of the layer selection pane there are little icons. One of them allows you to do layer adjustments, and one of them allows you to adjust the levels. Generally, you want to move the black slider to the point where it goes from lowest to highest, and the same with the white slider. Then the mid-tone one, you shift around until it looks better. Keep an eye on any spots where that original plus sign of cuts was, because getting them nearly invisible takes a lot of the work out of this process. Plus, if those lines from the cuts in the paper are gone, it usually means you've accomplished the darkest, smoothest blacks and the lightest, brightest whites. I always right-click on the layer and rasterize the image, which means that I can now work directly on this layer rather than on a separate floating one. No particularly compelling reason why, it's just how I prefer to do things. I also usually duplicate that layer before this just in case, which is also performed through right-clicking on the layer. This is also something my screen capture failed to properly record. For anything left to tweak after adjusting the levels, I paint over those spots with either a black or white brush. Generally, there are only a few little things to edit at this stage. You'll need to touch up the image along those cut lines, maybe fix any mistakes you made in the original, and then go around the outside of the image and make sure there aren't any gaps. One tip for switching between black and white on your brush easily is to hit the letter X on your keyboard. If your foreground color is set as black and your background is set as white in the color picker, it'll swap those colors. This way, you don't have to constantly hit those two swap arrows right above the swatches. However, because I'm working with old software on a computer that just wants to be left alone most days, commands don't always work for me, so you'll see me hitting those swap arrows a lot. It's good to know both options anyway, so I don't mind it most times. I know it sounds a lot like my computer and I get into a lot of arguments, and you'd be right, but we really do love each other. After you've gotten it all cleaned up to your liking and the edges are all sorted, save it. You probably should have saved a few times by now, because whenever you're working on something and get just far enough into it that it would be a pain to redo it is exactly the moment the power will go out for no reason, or the application will freeze. Get in the habit of constantly saving. Anyway, I'm doing both a raw PSD file with the layers as well as a compressed JPEG. Then close the image. Just like before, we're going to open a new canvas with the exact image size and same PPI resolution as before. This time, place the compressed JPEG. It should be exactly perfect right on the canvas since it's already the correct size, so just hit enter to finish placing it. To make your life a whole lot easier down the line, one of the first things you should do is go to the select menu, hit select all, and then hit save selection. There are keyboard shortcuts to do this, but like I said, mine are iffy. Plus, now you get to see where these things are if you don't already know. Name this saved selection something that'll stand out to you. I'm naming it Crop Me because that's exactly what we'll use it for. Now we need to resize the canvas. I'm going to start by doubling it to the left. Since the goal for this pattern is to be able to repeat it, we need to make sure everything lines up correctly on all edges. So, click on the tile in the resize grid that makes it so any additions will be made on the left side, then multiply your width by 2 in the measurement box. Boom, double wide. To get a copy of the image over there, I make sure to use the selection tool from the toolbar on the left. It's the arrow that's up at the top. Then I hold down the Option key on my keyboard until you see your arrow essentially duplicate, indicating that we'll copy whatever we select, and then hold down the Shift key to force whatever we move to go in a straight line. Shift forces things to stay rigidly either in line or in proportion and is totally a good key command to remember. Once you have both of those keys held down, click and hold on the image and slide it to the left. You should see a new layer appear that's a duplicate of the original one, and you should be able to move it into the empty space smoothly. If you're lucky and your program is set to do this, it should also snap into place once it detects the edge of the canvas or the edge of the original element. In this case, it's detecting both. That means there's no guessing as to whether or not it's lined up perfectly since the program's done it all for you. As you can see, the pattern doesn't match up super well, so time to doodle on top to make it all better. What I like to do is make sure that I'm drawing directly on the original image, meaning the one that we started this whole canvas with. Make sure that the original layer itself is under the copy layer of the new one to the left. This may sound ridiculous and insignificant, but if you do it this way, it means you only have to do this twice overall rather than 4 times. Oh, also, don't forget to right-click on the original layer and rasterize it so we can draw directly on it. Anyway, by only drawing directly on the original layer and making the images line up from here, you've automatically made it so that the existing right edge of the original image will perfectly pair up to the left side that you're now doodling on. Means you won't have any adjustments to make once we start this test out by moving a copy of the pattern to the right side. And by having the new copied layer on top of the one you're drawing on, you won't be tempted to make any adjustments to that side since anything you draw will only appear on the original layer. This sounds confusing, but I hope it isn't. Don't forget that you can use that shortcut of hitting the X key on your keyboard to cycle between your foreground and background color quickly, which is super helpful when you're just working in basic black and white like this. After you've got it all cleaned up and are satisfied with how the two pieces look together, we need to crop it back to the original size. Remember that selection we saved earlier? Go up to the selection option in the menu bar up top, click Load Selection, and then find the one that we saved in the drop-down menu. I named mine Crop Me because that's easy to remember. Once you do that, all that should be selected is exactly what was chosen earlier, so let's crop it. Go to Image, then Crop. At the end of this, we only need this one single tile, so this is expediting the process. Plus, the tile that we just eliminated didn't have its left side drawn on top of to make it actually line up with the right edge of our pattern. Same as we did before, we're now doubling the canvas size, but this time we're expanding it to the right. Then you hold down the Option key and the Shift key while moving a copy of the original tile over to the right, which should snap into place. When I said that making sure we were only drawing on the original tile should make it so that we don't need to do this work again on the right side, will likely pay off now. There probably won't be anything to change here, but it's always best to double check just in case you missed something somehow. Be sure to, again, only make any changes to the original image layer, not the one copied to the right. Once you're happy with it, select that crop me thing again and crop it. It probably won't surprise you to know that we're about to do the same thing for the top and bottom edges. In the canvas size adjuster, double the height measurement and make sure that extra space will only be added to one side. Use Option and Shift together again to move and copy the original tile, cleaning up the edge only on the original tile image. Select, crop, and then repeat the process for our last remaining edge. If there are any adjustments left, make them, but you should be good or almost good at this point. Make that final crop so the only thing left is that original completed tile. Now with all the extra doodle adjustments that make it so it actually lines up perfectly, whereas it wouldn't have before. Save. For the love of all things sudden power outage, I really hope this isn't the first time you have. Oops! As before, I'm keeping an original layered PSD file, but also saving a JPEG since that's a universal file type that we can use to upload to Redbubble. Phew! Most of the hard work is done. Now, some small tips I've noticed on Redbubble since it wasn't all obvious to me at first. For the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to assume you've made your Redbubble account by now and are ready to start uploading. If you haven't, follow the steps on their webpage to get started. Once you're ready, click on your icon in the top right corner of the site. There should be an option to upload new artwork. Because I like to make adjustments in size with each individual item, I choose the option that lets me work with all the products available. Upload your image, give it a title, write some nonsense about it, and add tags. I'm never really sure what to put here and usually find it to be the most stressful part of this whole process, which is absolutely ridiculous, but hey, I've been called ridiculous often. This background color thing right here is where you set what the default background color of objects will be, meaning anything that doesn't have your actual image on it, if available, will be black if you set it to black, or white if you set it to white, etc. I usually set mine to black because that's just how I roll. Afterwards, the image should be previewed on each of the available objects Redbubble can print for you. Some of them may be slightly grayed, and you'll notice those are the ones that say disabled rather than having a green enabled button on the bottom. The first couple of times I did this, I missed that. What it means is that this option doesn't exist in your shop until you enable it, so if you want these shirts to be available, you need to enable them. While you're clicked on an item, you can change the location and size of your image on it. Some products won't let you tile your pattern, and that's totally fine. I think it still looks pretty sweet as a standalone image, so I'm not too worried. There's also sometimes extra options hidden in this little settings gear, and this video is actually the first time I've seen these little baby onesies, so always check for hidden stuff inside. Let's find an item that lets us actually tile the pattern though, and there are two different menu spaces for this, so the first couple of times I uploaded, I actually thought that the second one wasn't a repeating option since it looked different. Not having a unified menu interface made this kind of a weird system to play with. Anyway, we specifically designed these patterns to tile in a normal grid, left and right and up and down. Truth be told, I don't actually have experience with making an offset pattern that essentially lines up on the diagonal, but it's certainly something I want to play with in the future. Once you've got that repeat set up, you may want to resize the image and also move it around. I use the preview of the product itself to keep an eye on what I think will look best. There are a lot of things that Redbubble offers, so it'll probably take you a little bit of time to go through everything. According to my timer, this took me about half an hour total. Don't worry if you miss something now, I've had to go back and edit options on multiple occasions and it's as tedious but also as easy as this. Here we go, one of the other repeating menu options. For whatever reason, this looks slightly different but functions exactly the same. This tricked me the first time I saw it and I thought it wasn't what I was looking for, but later realized through total accident that it was. Anyway, set up the pattern repeat here. You might want to double check that you enabled all the things you want and disabled all the objects you don't. Up to you. At the bottom, it'll ask you a couple of questions about whether or not you own the image, if it's got adult content, what category it belongs in, etc. This portion where it has the drop-down menu is asking you what you want to be the default preview in your shop. Personally, I like just the artwork to be the default image, but you could make it so that a pillow is the sample people see, or comforter, or dress, or whatever. After that, you're done. It'll send you to a page where you can see all the things you set up with the image on it, and you even have an option to easily edit by clicking the edit button in the top right corner. Apologies for the loading delay as I scroll through, but I love the way all these things look. Speaking of how they look, I now own one of my own pieces. My birthday was this past weekend, and a dear friend got me one of the skull scarves I designed because she knew I wanted it, and she's just the gosh darn sweetest. I can confirm that it completely and totally rocks, and I'm very in love with it. There's a link in the doobly-doo to my shop if you want to get a little gift for yourself or for someone else. Also, speaking of birthday gifts, this year I'm getting myself something I need. A break! With the holidays coming up, multiple friends and family events, my anniversary, and my hunky's birthday, well, this time of year is super packed, especially with secret projects that I can't share until after they're given to the people they're for. So, this is me doing the right thing for my own sanity and not trying to rush any of it. Don't worry, I'll be back as soon as I can, but I hope you all have one heck of a time while I'm gone. Also, if you're from the future and I've started uploading again, ignore this message! Just felt I should leave a tiny little notice in for anyone wondering. When I come back, I'm looking forward to sharing some of the things I'll have made by then, as well as exploring the Miyazaki palette even further. With any luck, I'll already have plenty to say about it. In the meantime, I hope this tutorial helped you, and I can't wait to see all the cool stuff you come up with. Feel free to shout yourself out in the comments, or let me know if there's anything you need a bit of clarification on. Until I see you next time, I wish you a peace that settles deep into your bones, an abundance of love that helps navigate through any turmoil, and the most incredible adventures. Bye!